Mendel's pea plant experiments. So we're going to look at a bunch of traits for peas and what Mendel did to figure out the laws of inheritance. So why did he pick peas? Notice how it's written, italicized. Could have underlined it too. Capital here, the rest under, the rest lowercase. And the reason is this is the scientific name, the genus and the species name. Okay, so anyway, why did he study pea plants? So they can be grown in a small area, so he only had a little bit of space, so he grew the peas. They produce lots and lots of offspring, so each seed inside this pea pod is an offspring, is a baby pea plant, a seed. So the way this works is you've got the flower here, and when it's pollinated, it grows this thing. So they produce pure plants, or another name for that is homozygous. They produce pure plants or homozygous plants when allowed to self-pollinate for several generations. And they can also be artificially cross-pollinated. So you can take the anthers off of a flower and make sure you cross-pollinate it with a different flower just by taking some of the other one's flower on a paintbrush. So that's what he did. So a little bit of background on flowering plants. Here's the pea with its flowers, and this is the girl part. So this is the stigma, the pistil, here are the ovaries. This is the stamen, or the boy part, and so this is the anther. This is what has the pollen on it, and this part's the filament. And so typically it can self-fertilize, and so the pollen here would get onto the stigma, and then the pollen tubes grow to the eggs, and you have a seed to start growing. And then this thing will grow into the pea pod, and it'll have its peas inside, which are the new babies. So anyway, this is the female parts, and this is the male parts right here. Or you could cut these off and pollinate it with a different plant's pollen. And they're controllable. So pollen contains sperm produced by the stamen, and the ovaries contain eggs that are found inside the flower, right here. So pollen carries sperm to the eggs for fertilization. So you can either have this one pollinate itself, or you can take pollen from this one and put it on this one. Notice if you bother doing that, you'd better take off the boy parts so you don't pollinate it and then it pollinates itself. So you want to make sure you do this in a very controlled way. So if you want this one to pollinate this one, you better take off this one's boy parts before they're able to fertilize the eggs. So self-fertilization can occur in the same flower. So that's what could happen right here because the boy parts and the girl parts are all in one flower. And they can also, cross-fertilization can happen between flowers. And so that's what's happening right here. So we had to keep really, really, really good records. So this is a picture of what he would do to take off of the male parts. So Mendel hand-pollinated flowers using a paintbrush. Pretty meticulous work when you figure there were 28,000 of them. So he could snip the stamens, the male parts, and prevent self-pollination, and then he could cover each flower with a cloth bag to prevent random fertilization. So once he took off the male parts and then fertilized the female parts, he'd put a bag over the whole thing to make sure that he knew exactly who fertilized him.
I didn't know we could do that.
I know, isn't that cool, Shrek? So he traced traits through several generations. He would look at the parents and then see what the kids were like, and then mate the kids with the kids and see what they were like. So here's how he began. If you look at this beautiful pea plant here, look, it grew from a pea originally. Anyway, here it is. And you can see the girl parts here and the boy parts here. And so if this fertilizes this, then these are going to grow. And so here are the peas that grew from the flowering plant. And you can take that and you can grow it in the ground and it'll grow up. So Mendel produced pure or homozygous strains by allowing plants to self-pollinate for several generations. So he would have a red one and mate it with itself, and whatever red ones were he would mate them with themselves, and the ones that were red for many, many, many generations, he would say were pure. And so here are the traits that he looked at. So the 8 traits in pea plants that Mendel studied. So we'll look at these, and so I just want to kind of orient you to the whole thing. The peas can be smooth or they can be wrinkled. Bum, ba-dum, bum. So the shape is either round or wrinkled. And this one you can see is dominant. So that would be big R, or big R, little r. And the wrinkled one is recessive. You can tell that because it's a lowercase r. And there it is. He also looked at the color. So yellow, believe it or not, is dominant over green, which is the lowercase y. And I know right now you're saying I've never seen a yellow pea, and that's because they just mate the green ones all the time. Apparently people don't like yellow peas. Maybe they don't look healthy. I don't know. Pod shape, is the pod shape smooth or is it wrinkled? The smooth one is the dominant one. And you absolutely do not need to memorize them. MCAS and I will never give you a test that says, is smooth dominant over wrinkled or is wrinkled dominant? We'll tell you which one's dominant. It's hard enough to do all the Punnett squares and all the stuff you'll need to do. You don't need to memorize crazy stuff. But I just want to kind of show you what the different traits are. So the pod color can be either green or yellow, and in this case, the green is dominant. And then they also have a seed coat color. So here's the seed coat. Is it gray or white? And that's the best picture I could get of that. Flower position, is it at the end or is it axial, so right along the stem, or is it right at the end, terminal? And are the flowers tall or are they short? So here's a tall one and here's a short one. And what are their colors? For him, he studied purple and white flowers. There are peas of other varieties, different species of pea plants that have different colors, but he studied the purple ones and the white ones, which are kind of beautiful, I think. Okay, so then a couple more terms to learn, naming the generations. Parental generations he called the P1. So this is the parents in a breeding experiment. So what did he start with? What did they look like for the very first ones? The F1 generation stands for filial one. I think that's in Latin. Filial, I think, means sibling or something, or kids. Someone can tell me that. Anyway, F1 generation, this is the first generation of offspring in a breeding experiment. So they're the kids of the P1. And then the next generation, the grandkids, are called the F2 generation. So the second generation of offspring in a breeding experiment, these are like the grandkids. I don't know if you can call a pea plant a grandkid, but go with it here. So these are the offspring of the F1 generation. So you'd mate parent generation, and you'd make F1s, and you could mate an F1 with itself and make an F2. And those would be the grandkids of these. So here's the examples. Cross 2 homozygous plants. Here's the P generation, the parental generation. So tall, tall by short, short. You would mate this one a whole bunch of times and make sure it was pure first. And same thing here. And so you would know they were both homozygous or pure. And anyway, F1 generation is going to be big T, little t, and I will show you why very soon. Anyway, you can mate this with itself or with its sibling, I guess. Ew, and you get the next generation, the F2 generation. And so in this case, you'd get 3 tall ones and a short one. And so that's the kind of thing he studied. And he had to figure out these things to understand why it would be a 3-to-1 ratio. And I think that's a great place to stop.